Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar hosted by the Northern Ontario Black Economic Empowerment Programme, NOBEEP. Bonjour à tous et à tous, à toutes et à tous. Bienvenue au webinaire d'aujourd'hui présenté par le Programme d'appui aux entrepreneurs noirs du Nord de l'Ontario. Today's webinar will be delivered in English. Before we continue, I'd like to let you know that the webinar is being recorded and the replay will be shared with you afterwards. Just a few housekeeping reminders. Please keep your microphone muted. If you have any question, feel free to submit them in the chat and it will be answered as time permitted. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that the NOBEEP is headquartered in the city of Greater Sudbury and respectfully recognizes that we operate on the traditional land of the Atikamekw, Anishinaabe, and the Wanapite First Nation within the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850 territory. We recognize this territory as the traditional home of the Anishinaabe people who have been the guardian and stewards of this land since time immemorial. We also acknowledge that the lands on which we live and work across Canada are the traditional territories of First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people. We honor the enduring connection to these lands and waters and pay our respect to the elders, past, present, and emerging. As we work to create opportunities and strengthen Black entrepreneurship across Northern Ontario, we are committed to the spirit of reconciliation and to building meaningful, respectful partnerships and with Indigenous community. It is now our pleasure to introduce our presenters, Charles Chamirai Nyabeze, who is the Chief Executive Officer of NOBEEP. Charles, the floor is yours.
All right, merci beaucoup, Karen, for the introduction. And hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. As Karen said, my name is Charles Chamirai Nyabeze, and I'm the CEO of the Northern Ontario Black Economic Empowerment Program. And today I'm going to be talking to you about a topic of great importance, which is business etiquette for entrepreneurs. Now, a little bit about NOBEEP, for those of you who don't know us. We have a mandate, obviously, to address all of Northern Ontario Black economic empowerment requirements. And we're funded by the Government of Canada and governed through the Afro Heritage Association of Canada of Sudbury. And NOBEEP gathers, develops, and delivers culturally appropriate support for Black entrepreneurs and business owners to address the gaps in the Northern Ontario entrepreneurship ecosystem. So our territory goes all the way down to Parry Sound and up past Thunder Bay, Wawa, and the regions going as close as you can get to the Manitoba border. So we are across Northern Ontario. And we're generously funded by PAENNO, also through the BEP program. So a couple of learning objectives. We want to be able to speak to you today about how demonstrating professional business etiquette in Canada is important, and also to be able to help you to build stronger relationships through communication and networking, and presenting yourself confidently in person and virtually, and for you to develop habits that can build credibility as you grow a business. So why does business etiquette matter? Because professionalism influences opportunities. Poor etiquette will cost you business and opportunities. In fact, poor etiquette can even cost you friends. Trust is earned through consistent behavior. So how you show up in a consistent way becomes fundamental and important. Big elephant in the room for us as people of Afro descent is time management, right? Like, people talk and joke around, about African time, etc. But the truth is, if you don't respect someone's time, it really is a way for you to say to them subliminally that you don't value their time. And in fact, we've been talking about time a lot within the team context, and we recognize something. If you arrive on time, you're late. So for example, even on this call today, some people are going to be showing up late, and they shouldn't be showing up late. People should show up on time. And, you need to arrive early. Respect agendas of the meetings. Make sure you keep things on time. This is why we wanted to start this right on time. Uh, if you're going to be late, communicate your delays. Send a text message. I'm going to be late. Something came up. And more importantly, be prepared so that when you show up, you're prepared for the thing that you've come to do. How you show up matters. Your appearance, how you dress goes a long way. How you're groomed matters. And one thing I want to bring up here is, look, don't have a meal of dry cod fish that smells a lot and then show up to the meeting, not having brushed your teeth, smelling like the fish. Don't eat garlic and then go to a meeting and talk to people, right? And then at the same time also, like, look, and I'm going to say this as carefully as I can. People smell different. I smell different, you smell different. Now, sometimes if you sweat a lot, your body can produce odors that can be offensive. So please find a way for you to ask people, do I smell okay? Do a bit of a sniff test. Smell yourself. Make sure that you smell okay. There's nothing worse than talking to somebody who has got bad breath and body odor. So groom yourself, take care of yourself. Professional attire is important, dress for the occasion at hand. Your body language also matters a lot. Make sure that you're not doing things that show the audience that you're not paying attention. Just like me talking to you right now, if I pick up my phone and start talking on the phone when I'm talking to you, all of you are going to be like, this guy's body language is telling me something that's not paying attention. And then another one is first impressions matter. So how you show up can be how you get judged. I know there's stereotypes out there. Don't make the stereotype true by how you show up and the first impression that you give. Another very important thing, and my team and I talk about this all the time, we talk about the 6 Ps. Remember that one, 6 Ps. Proper prior planning prevents poor performance. Research your audience. Know who it is that you're meeting with. Know your customer. Do customer analysis. Get to be very familiar with what your customer is all about. And also confirm that people are understanding the things that you're talking about. You also need to make sure you're preparing your materials properly. Make sure you prepare materials ahead of time and make sure that the technology you're using, you test it. And I'm going to be talking a bit more about this technology piece because, as everybody goes virtual nowadays, there's a big need to make sure that you're showing up correctly virtually. Talking more about your professional communication, make sure that you speak clearly, okay? Make sure that you enunciate words, trying to say words as carefully as you can. Also listen carefully. And I always say to people, you were created with 2 ears and 1 mouth. So try and do double listening and less talking, listening actively. And then ask thoughtful questions. Give somebody the impression that indeed you're listening to them and you're hearing them. Confirm understanding by saying things back to people when you're talking to people. And also try to respond promptly. And I will talk a little bit more about follow-up a little bit later on, but make sure you do that follow-up afterwards as well. Elevator pitch. When you are in a networking setting and somebody approaches you and asks you, what do you do? Try to find a way to be very clear. Who are you? So for example, who am I? Charles Chamirai Nyabeze. What do I do? CEO of the Northern Ontario Black Economic Empowerment Program. How do we help people? We support entrepreneurs grow their businesses, evaluate their businesses, prepare their businesses for success. And what problems are we solving? We're solving the problem between you having a business idea and having someone use your business. So connecting you to customers in a meaningful way through making sure you're properly prepared. And why choose us? Because we can talk to you in a culturally sensitive way. We can give you access to opportunities that you don't know about. We also have got people working for us that can support you, listen to you, and hear you out. So we have a process. So for you, in your business, think about your elevator pitch. Think about that 15 seconds, 20 seconds where you can talk about who you are as that elevator goes up before you get off on your own floor. That's very super important. Networking is something that we all like to do. When you show up at a networking event, show up with your business card on hand. Try to give the business card at the very end of the conversation, not at the very beginning. Do a little bit of research about the audience that you're going to be meeting when you go to a networking event. Listen and build relationships. Don't go and hide in the corner. And also, one thing I've noticed is that people tend to want to go to a networking event and hang out with the people that they know. So try to hang out with other people that you may not know so that you can be connecting with new people. And then also follow up. When you meet someone and you talk to them and they say to you, yes, we can meet you later on, or we should talk afterwards, follow up. Following up is the critical path to success. And this is a message that I've been sharing with my team quite a bit lately, is that success happens through follow-up. So if you're not following up, you're missing out on opportunities. Next, I want to talk to you about virtual meeting etiquette, because remember I mentioned to you, I'm going to talk about a little bit more about that. When you're doing a Zoom call, a Teams call, or doing one of these virtual meetings, make sure your background makes sense. Don't have the background of your bed in the background of, maybe a couch, people talking. And also try to make sure that you've got the light in front of you. Don't put the light behind you. Even for me, I've got another light here. If I shine the light in my face, you can see my face gets a bit brighter, right? So make sure the lighting is in front of you, not behind you. So don't have the window behind you, letting a lot of light in. And if I can just be frank, if your skin is as dark as mine, chocolatey brown like mine, the cameras on the computers sometimes don't really pick up the color. If you're light skinned, like Gina, for example, if you're light skinned like Gina, you can get you can see her more easily than me because her skin is lighter. So please be sensitive to the fact that that our dark tone sometimes doesn't allow that. And then also mute yourself if you're not the one talking, right? Even at the beginning of our session, I could hear some background talking. I know Gina did mute some people, but mute yourself so that you don't interrupt the conversation happening. Okay. And also if you to have a side conversation, mute yourself. Your camera positioning is very important. Try not to have the camera too far on the side, so don't end up showing up like this, or showing up, on the other side. Try to position yourself in the middle of the screen so people can clearly see who you are when you're having a conversation with them. And again, try and dress appropriately, right? As much as you can. In particular, on a virtual meeting, the top half of your body, you should try and make sure your dress is accordingly as possible. And I think that's super, super important on how you show up. The next thing I want to talk to you about is something that's very, very sensitive, and it's customer service. You know, in some countries, being a little bit rude to customers is somewhat acceptable. Rushing them through is also somewhat acceptable. In Canada, you know what? People expect great customer service. We expect the customer service to be like a McDonald's for everything. Somebody say, "Good afternoon, how may I help you? What would you like?" The customer is always right. So how you speak to customers is super important. I have been to a few different businesses in town, some of them owned by Black people, some of them owned by obviously non-Black people, and I've experienced different levels of customer support. I've had business owners not show up and welcome me to their business. I've had people not smile and sort of give the attitude that they don't really care when they do care. So please make sure that your customer service is top notch. Handle complaints professionally. Don't have the attitude that, this customer is wrong. I don't care what they're talking about. Have the attitude that the customer feedback is important. So handle that professionally. When I think of my experience with Amazon services, whenever I buy something on Amazon, even if they send me something broken, the way that they react to the customer service is very fast. It's just good customer service, right? You don't want people not to come back. If you give a customer bad service, they may never come back, and you just lost a customer for life. So handle complaints professionally. And then also quality control. Make sure that your presentation skills are top notch, okay? Don't give service in a way that makes the customer think that maybe you don't really care about cleanliness, about hygiene. So especially if you're serving people things they're putting in their mouth or things they're putting on their body, make sure that your customer service and your quality is top notch as much as you can. Get feedback. Ask your friends, ask the community, is my packaging right? Because sometimes if it's not right, that can be a problem for you to get repeat customers. People sometimes will buy from you and say, "I'm never going to eat there again. I'm never going to buy that thing from them again." So it's important that you recognize that as something very, very important. The next thing I want to touch on is cultural intelligence. Like, look, Canadians have a culture as a collective, but people who come from other countries also have a culture. So try to understand that Canadian expectations could be a little bit different than expectations in other parts of the world. So try to speak to the Canadian customers in a way that observes that, you're respecting the diversity of the country. You're respecting that people may not quite know about your background, so respect that as well. And then also, I want you to know that there is a way to adapt without losing your identity. So don't think that, oh, by serving Canadians, you have to lose who you are, right? You don't have to lose who you are, but you do have to adapt, especially when you're coming into a new area, introducing something new. That's so important. Next thing I want to talk about is just your mind, having a growth mindset. And in this area here, I want to start off by saying, be the kind of person that seeks feedback. Ask for feedback. And when you receive feedback, recognize that feedback is there for you to learn something, right? Don't take feedback as an insult. Oh, why did you give me that feedback? Now I'm insulted. If I tell you, "Hey, your packaging is not right," have the mindset of saying, this is good information for me to grow, right? And by growing, you can improve your service. So how you've been serving customers today, based on how you're thinking about your business, should be very different from how you service them in the future. It should be better in the future. So try that. Another thing I want to mention here is, and I forgot to put the word here, but is the word trust. Make sure that you are the kind of person who speaks the truth. Don't exaggerate, blow it out of proportion, try and make it bigger than what it is, trying to inflate your experience to be more than what it is. Try to stick to the facts. And the whole point here is that you need to recognize that something is happening in your head where you need to make those changes to become a better person and to then service your clients in a better way. The next thing I want to talk about is follow-up and accountability. Remember I said earlier on that success is akin to follow-up, right? So people who reply quickly tend to get more done, right? I've come across situations where people don't reply, they don't follow up, they stress the whole systems out, right? It's almost like you're not opening the door. So you've got a big pile up behind you. Your inbox is like choking because you don't reply emails, you don't respond, you don't follow up. So try to reply to information when you get it, right? When someone leaves a message for you about your business, make sure you reply and then have a way to even document those replies. Return phone calls. Okay. I have personally called businesses that have never called me back. Okay. And there goes the business, right? And then also, when you tell customers, I'm going to do this thing for you by a certain time, do it by that time. If you meet with one of my team members and we have a good conversation with you about your business and we give you good feedback about what you should do next, make sure you do that thing next. So meeting deadlines is super important. Keep commitments. Your word has to be like bond. Your word has to be solid. Don't get in the habit of not keeping commitments, not keeping your word, because it builds a reputation. Even amongst friends, you can ask friends, which of your friends is the most reliable? They'll tell you this one's more reliable. Don't be the friend that everybody says, that one, a good friend, but you cannot trust them to keep their commitments or keep their timings. That's super important. So next, I want to go with you sort of looking to more summarize some of the things I've been talking to you about by giving you what I called here a professional entrepreneur checklist, right? So you're a professional entrepreneur with good business etiquette. The first thing I want to say to you is this, and I'm going to pick on Black people, okay? And the reason I pick is because you know what I'm talking about. I know you know what I'm talking about. Respecting time is important. We cannot have African time in Canada. We need to have Canadian time. Canadian time means show up early. Don't show up late, right? Some of you here know you've showed up late to events. Even as a speaker at an event, you've showed up late. So we need to get this right, this keeping the time piece, because I think our success as a people is going to come as a result of keeping the time. And for my non-Canadian friends who have been observing, so my non-Afro friends who've been observing Black people being late at events, you also are shaking your head going, Charles, you're right. You know what? Maybe you're afraid to say it because you think you're going to offend somebody, right? The other day I was at church and I noticed that the only lay people who came to church were the Black people. And I was like, oh, come on, this is not good, okay? It just is so obvious. Now, if I'm saying this in a harsh way, please do correct me, but I think most of you will feel where I'm coming from on respecting time. Number two, prepare. Remember those 6 Ps. Proper prior planning prevents poor performance. Make sure that you show up prepared to do the thing that you want to do your research, and success will follow. Communicate. Make sure that your communication skills are more listening, less on the talking. Make sure you do that in that understanding piece where you acknowledge communication, you validate the communication that it is done right. Networking. I know you all know this saying, entrepreneurs, your network is your net worth. I think if I was doing this live, you would all have said net worth, right? So who you know matters. In this country, it matters. In Afro nations, it matters. In business, it matters. Even going to the hospital matters who you know. Okay. If you know people, it's going to be able to open doors for you. So your network is very, very important. Try not to just hang out with the same old people all the time. Okay. Don't just be, with your friends from 10 years ago. And whenever you go to an event, you hang around the same people, you go for dinner with the same people, you do email with the same people. Expand your network, right? Again, I'm going to say it. Your network is your net worth. Next, follow through. This is so critical and important. This is the critical path to success. Those who don't follow through, those who don't follow up are seriously going to hamper their own success. So don't be the kind of person that is known for not following through and not following up. If people are consistently knocking at your door, following up with you and asking you to follow through, that is a good indication for you to say, I need to follow up and follow through. Use your calendar more often. Put reminders. Talk to your phone. Sometimes you can set your phone, make me a reminder for a certain day and a certain time. That's what you need to do in order to be successful. So as we move towards the close of the presentation, I want to ask you, I want to challenge you actually. Everything I've spoken to you about right now is a habit. You know, showing up on time is a habit. Listening is a habit. How you show up is part of your habit. So here's a challenge for you. What one habit will you improve this week? What one sounds like a tongue twister. What one habit will you improve this week? Pick that one thing that you want to change about who you are, that you know you're going to make a change so that you can have that better business etiquette. All right, so now we're going to move into the discussion period. I think we've got about 5 minutes or so for discussion before we close off at 12:30. So I want to open up the floor to any questions. Karen and Gina, help me with the questions in the chat box, maybe read them out, and then I can try and answer them to the best of my ability. But thank you so much for participating in this discussion that we're having. And now I open up the floor for questions. I think Edwin, your hand is up. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask.
Oh, okay. Yeah, can I go ahead?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, this is George. Yeah, I would say great presentation overall. I think I'm giving more of a feedback rather than a question. I think one feedback I'm going to take really serious after this conversation is about networking events. Because I know I would say amongst the Black community to an extent, most times, including myself, when we attend events, we get to, sit, amongst each other. Maybe for, it has to do with the long history and all that, about Black race and all that. So I say most times when I go for events, I know Blacks, we like to sit together, we like to chat together, then, stay among same people at most networking events that I attend. Maybe that's something that, I will try to, leave that comfort zone in, when I attend my next networking event, hopefully get to, chat some more and, engage with, other communities as well. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's my feedback from this meeting.
No,
Yeah,
George,
thank
thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much. George, thank you so much for saying this. I've seen this with my own eyes, and it goes further, it's almost like I'm from Zimbabwe, right? I speak Shona. It's like the Shonas hang out with the Shona people. And then the other tribe hang out with the other tribe. It's like, if you look at my friends, my brothers and sisters from Nigeria, you see the Yorubas hang out the Yorubas only. The Igbo hang out the Igbo only. The Hausa hang out the Hausa only. The Swahili people, Swahili only. The Francophone only. This is what weakens us as a people, right? We need to expand our networks. Okay, I think Doku, you got a question? Go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you so much, Chamirai, for the wonderful session. I've never heard difficult conversations delivered so beautifully in my life. So
Oh,
thank
wow.
you for saying the hard stuff in such a wonderful way. I took notes and I said, okay, this is exactly how you deliver information like this. So thank you for that. The biggest thing for me was if you arrive on time, you are late. And for
Mm.
that one, I'm fully balanced on that table. So I'm taking that away and I'm going to course correct immediately. Thank you for that. My question is about how do we manage situations where people who have displayed a lot of bad etiquette have projected a perception about us Black folk who you now for which you now inherit when you step into those opportunities and relationships. So maybe I arrive early and they were already expecting me to arrive late because everybody else that came to church that was late was Black. How do you manage that? Because I experienced that a lot and I feel like I inherited some people's bad habits. And now the person is expecting me to either mess up or do something that has to be 10 times better than what I'm required to do just so that I can even start at the regular baseline. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you, Dokun, for your kind words, and also thank you so much for acknowledging the fact that some of the things I had to say were difficult for me to say, and thank you for acknowledging how you received that information. To your question, I think there's something that I would say is called social capital, right? And I think what happens is that you have to prove to people consistently that you've changed. It's like trust. It's like if I don't trust someone, they broke my trust, but they want to earn the trust back. Over time of them doing the right behaviors, I can start to earn that. So for those of you on the call who know you have been late to events and activities, what you need to do is stop being late. Okay. I'm reminded, in some of the conversation with my wife is, we said maybe we should just set the alarm clock to be the clock to be 5 minutes ahead. Then that way, you know what? If the clock is 5 minutes ahead, you're never going to leave at the time, right? You're always going to be a little bit early. So again, this is a habit, okay? You have to get in the habit. Catch yourself doing the wrong thing and say, I'm doing the wrong thing. It's almost like conviction. Get yourself under conviction as being a late person, and then you can start to make some changes to do that. But I think if you start to realize that your lateness is being received as disrespect and that you don't care about someone's time, then you should start to be concerned more and more. I heard once that some of these big managers out there or big shots, they have actually said that if someone shows up late, that's it. No more talking to you. The meeting is over. You know, it's like going on a flight. If you show up late on the flight, you may miss the flight. So let's make sure that we are always course correcting so we don't end up missing the flight. We've got about 1 more minute to go. I don't know if we can take one more question. I think we may be able to, but if there's another question, or maybe Gina or Karen, is there a question in the chat?
There's one in the chat, Charles.
Okay.
So, Layla has a question. How much does age matter for a young woman under 25 or 30 in business? How is she perceived by executives and professionals who are older than 30?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Leila, for that very, very deep question. You know what? Look, I also was young, now I'm 53 years old. I used to be also young. And sometimes, although I'd feel like I was out of place. But the one thing I can tell you is young people will show up with questions. Young people will show up with listening ears. Young people who show up and follow through, they receive good reception with the older population. And also, as a young person, you got to recognize that you want to separate yourself from the younger people who are not professional to the ones who are professional. So you have to project yourself a little bit differently as well. How you handle yourself in the audiences of the older people super matters. One thing I'm going to encourage people to do is this. If you're a younger person, find someone who's older to be your mentor, who can help you to understand how to maybe the dynamics of working with older people. Young people who talk a lot can also be seen as not being very wise in that they're not listening enough. So make sure that as a young person that you're always being very careful of that as well. So Leila, thank you for your question. So folks, I do see some other questions on the chat box here, but again, you know what, though, we want to respect time and we want to keep the agenda. So I'm going to ask Karen to come back online here and thank everybody for coming on the call so that we can wrap it up right on time. Thank you so much. Karen, back over to you.
Thank you for everyone for joining us and today. We appreciate your participation and look forward to connecting with you again at the future event from NOBEEP. The recording will be available as soon as possible and we'll share it with you. Merci à tout le monde pour votre participation et nous vous remercions pour votre présence et espérons vous retrouver lors de nos prochains événements du PAENNO. L'enregistrement sera disponible et nous allons le partager avec vous. Et je vous souhaite une bonne journée. Thank you so much and have a good afternoon.
And thank you, Karen. Thank you, everybody. Have a safe day.